Next is actually assembling the weapon. So once you've come up with the prompt, then you want to come up with the assembly of the weapon. And there are two methods that I primarily use the most, but it's not limited to. There are other users like Jeremy who has just hand-painted entire weapon without using any kind of stamps. Now, I'm not going to be showing that because that would take up an entire masterclass stream, if not a couple episodes. But we'll show you two methods that are quick, that are easy, and that way it's not so complex when you're trying to put together your weapons. The first method is to simply augment the weapon, right? So you could just type in weapon into the catalog and then just pick out of these weapons. I'll go ahead and expand all assets so I can see all of them. And we even have some new art, by the way, this dwarven art. So you've got like a dwarven axes here, dwarven sword, warhammer. So there's a lot of new stuff that's going to be coming out with 2.0. You've got some explosives here. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to be coming up. But let's start with something simple, right? Let's start with maybe like a sword or an axe. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. Let's go with this axe right here. So I pick an axe, right? And then from there, I want to decide the prompt, remember, which is maybe it's a fire axe, maybe it's an ice axe, whatever it might be, you can decide for yourself, right? And so you pick the weapon and then you're going to augment it. So we have to pick something. So I'm going to say frost, like maybe it's an ice axe or something. Compliments to Jeremy because Jeremy came up with a hand frost axe. And so shout out to them. I'm going to be making like this frost double-sided axe. And so what we'll do here is that we've picked the main object to augment. And now we can go to the shape tool and maybe pick a texture that we can put on top of the blade to give it that elemental effect. So we'll turn stroke off. We'll choose fill, we'll go into the fill texture, and we can kind of choose a texture that we want to implement. Like this ice, deep blue ice works fine. Then we'll go ahead and choose the pen, and then I'm just going to go ahead and use the pen and go over the axe itself with the pen. And then I'm just going to have this texture show up over here like this. So just give that a moment to kind of show up here. And you only have to do one side of the axe because you don't have to do both with the pen. You can just make it a shape and then you're going to go ahead and just flip it. So let's go ahead and add it to the, I think it's a shape, might be below it. So let's go up. So you can see that the blade is there. Let's maybe change the fill texture and then let's change the blend mode to interact with the blade itself. So I can choose darken, multiply, color, lighten, screen, color dodge. I can use overlay, which I think overlay works pretty good. It already gives it kind of a frost-like look. So we'll copy and paste that. And then just flip it. So I'm going to do this and then choose flip. Face the other way. And then just add that right to the axe itself right there like that. So now I have that. Now, it's not enough. Maybe I want to keep adding more to it. Like maybe I want to add some kind of aura. So using a light source is always a great way to give it like this glowing aura-like feel to it. So I'll just use this blue light that I have and just place it right on top. And it already kind of gives it that blue kind of frost kind of glow to it. Now we can add more to it. You want to show that it's like a frost. We can add things like, we can maybe look in a pack that's got snow, like there's Nordic stuff. Oopsie, that's from the wrong style. We'll go back in here, fantasy battle maps, open that up. Let's maybe type in ice. Let's take a look here. Yeah, we'll get to, don't worry, we'll get to suggestions soon. First, let's just kind of go over the methods here. You know, I think maybe a crystal might work best. Let's try a crystal. Maybe one of these ones, or maybe this one right here. I'm not sure. We could put like a crystal at the top, or we can add like a goblet or something. There's a lot of different things that you can kind of come up with. Like here's this one right here. This right here might work fairly well. I think this looks kind of nice. It's like a headpiece that goes on top, but I don't really like the color. So we could just change it to this bluish kind of color like this. And then we'll just put it right here on the edge like this. And you've got this nice headpiece on the top. You could even add another light source kind of on top of that if you wanted to. So it's kind of light, kind of glowing there. So now that you're kind of adding to the weapon. We can also maybe take some snow. It's kind of associated with ice and winter. So we could take some snow and just put it right over that like that. And then just bring the opacity down a little bit. And then you kind of have this nice weapon part here. So now you can add more to it. Like we could add something to the bottom. of it, just to kind of add more to it, because there seems to be more here. You could use like a skull or whatever. And what I normally do is I kind of choose elements that are going to work best with it. So, you know, like I could use, let's actually use a skull. That could be nice. Let's go with skull. Put that down. Let's use this one right here. And then just put it right at the bottom like that. Turn off the shadow. And if you wanted it to be a different color, you could. Like I could change this and change the hue to make sure that the handle is more of a bluish color. Just bump up the saturation. That way I got some blue there. And then same thing with this. I'm going to bump the saturation up and just change the hue a little bit. This kind of bluish color. I think I'll bump the contrast up a little bit. Bring the brightness down. And then kind of get that bluish color that I'm looking for. Okay, and now you have this nice create group. And we can call it whatever we want. A frost axe. We can change it. But you get the general idea, right? And then I'm just going to tilt it like this just to make it more interesting. So, not complex, right? You have this nice, easy axe. You've augmented it with lights, the shape tool, other stamps, effects, and then it kind of brings it to life, right? And then what you do is, remember, you make it large, you build it large, and then you can scale it down to its original size. Because at this, when it's rather large, right, you can see the thick line work. So I always just scale it down so that way it's not too big and the line work's not too crazy. So first method, augmentation. That's the first step. The next step is just to make it yourself out of parts and pieces. So it's not complex. For instance, let's say that I wanted to make this same axe, only different axe shapes, or I wanted to have a one-sided axe. I could totally do that. So what you would do first is build the handle of the axe, and a pole works great for that. So I can go in, just type in pole, and you'll see there's this nice pole. And I'm going to make sure that the top face, that's this face right here, that face is facing upward, because if it's facing downward, then it's going to be weird, right? So face upward. Now you have the pole. Now you could make it a little bit thicker. I can go to transform, change the width. So it's nice and thick, nice thick handle, just like it is right here. I can also change that color again to get that blue color that I'm looking for. And then I can decide to make the blade itself. And so you can make a blade with the shape tool. It's not complex. First, what I like to do is just turn the grid on so that way I can use the grid as a guide when I'm putting together the shape. And then what I'll do is I'm going to change the grid size a little bit to maybe have 40 cells, so it's a little bit smaller. The smaller the grid, the more fine-tuned details I can make when I'm making the blade's edge. Okay, so shape tool first. And then from here, you need to decide what kind of texture that you want to use for the blade. And that's up to you. I generally either use this gray ground, or you can also use, there's another one, I forgot the name of it. I think it's called concrete. Let me type it in and see if I can find it. Nope, it's not there. I'm not sure where it's located, but there's another one there that you can also use for it. Let's just use this one right here for now. I think this gray ground. Oh, there it is right there. Stone. You can use stone or you can use gray ground. Either one of those works just fine. So first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly place down the shape so that I can kind of see what it looks like. I'm also going to take the grid all the way down to like beneath the stamps so it's not in the way. I'm also going to take this right here. Let's see, is the grid all the way down to layer -5? Yes, it is. Okay. And then this shape right here, which we're going to set to normal. And then I'm going to choose a stroke. We're going to use a black line. You don't have to use a black line if you don't want to. It's up to you, but I'm just going to add a black line so it's just easier to see the shape. And then you can kind of see the color as well. If you don't like this, you can always change it up. Like I could desaturate it so it has a more steel color. I can bring the contrast down so that it's not quite as, those artifacts aren't quite popping out as much, so I could do that. There's a lot of different things that you could do to get that metal thing, but I recommend using a texture so that way the metal at least has some kind of texture on it. Otherwise, if you use a flat color, you'll have to probably paint some of those textures in yourself. So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? So let's say that I want to now make this different shape for the axe instead of this double-bladed side. This is pretty easy stuff. I would just simply snap to grid. That's step 1. And then I would want to choose the shape. Do I want a curved blade? Do I want a straight blade? what kind do I want? If I'm going to start with a curved blade, then I recommend you use the circle shape. So you start with the circle shape first. So here's the edge. Right here, we're going to establish the edge as being on the left side. And on the right side, I'm going to have it connect to the pole. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the shape. I'm going to go to preview. And then I'm going to make that shape all over again. I'm going to make sure that it snaps a little bit. I'm going to try to carve out. I'm going to try and snap the grid off because it's having a hard time staying in place here. Let me undo it, actually. Let's try it again. Preview. There we go. Oh, snap to grid. Turn that on. There we go. Snap to grid. And always kind of make it a little bit bigger when you're making it. Don't make the shape very, very tiny. Make it fairly large, and that way you can scale it down and you can deal with the details. So I'm going to go plus. Then I'm going to go back this way. I'm going to scale it down a little bit more. About this size, I think, should work good. Let's turn the snap to grid off because it's kind of getting in my way. Right here, like this. Let's go minus. So here's that part of the blade. Now I need to connect it to the pole itself. So I'm going to go back, preview, turn my snap to grid back on to make sure that I'm snapping to the grid. Let's start here. Plus, with this one, let's have another one that goes out this way. Let's make it go a little farther out. Like this, plus, there we go, kind of goes a long way. I want it to make sure that the blade doesn't accidentally hit the actual rod itself. And then from here, I might want to add some details. So I'm going to go to preview here, and I'm just going to remove some of these pieces. Let's turn the snap to grid off. It's going to get in the way. Go right here. Let's connect it right about here. Go minus. Let's do minus again. There we go. Now we have the connector to it, and I can put this right up against the blade here. You can put it up to the front if you want, so it covers up like this. It covers the rod. Let's go ahead and turn that shadow off. So now I have this shape right here. That's the first part of the blade, right? But then I can also create other parts of the blade as well, and I can even just use this. I can copy and paste this whole thing right here. I'm going to snap it to the grid, and then I'm just going to delete sections that I don't want to use. So I'm going to go here, go to subtract, remove that piece. Let's take snap to grid off real quick because it seems to be getting in the way a little bit here. And then I can take this same piece right here like this, and then just put it right up against this edge like this. Let's bring it down a layer like this. Let's maybe just curve it, make it a little bit smaller. And then we have the back part of the axe like this. Okay, so that's the first step. It's just putting together the shapes, putting the axe together. We can even make this just a little bit smaller, so that way it kind of tapers off a little bit. Let's maybe edge it this way a little bit. There we go. So you have that part. Now we need to add in the lights and the shadow part. Because right now you notice that it's kind of flat. So how is it that I make it to where this blade isn't flat, right? So we're going to add light and shadow. So let's go to the shape tool, and we're going to use the line tool. We're going to have one line that's going to be black, and we're going to have it blurry. I'm going to change it to blur. I'm going to bring the opacity or the stroke size up. I'm going to bring the blur like this around that shape. So I have one black, and then I'm going to copy and paste, place it again, and then switch the color to white. Okay, so here's the part where to know where to put the white edge and the darker edge. The white edge is going to be the sharp edge. That means the cutting edge of the blade. So when I place this white edge down right here, I want to put it along this edge right here, along that edge right there. I'm going to follow it with either a pen or a mouse. You can also just use shapes. It's up to you. I'm going to go in and just put this white edge along there. Now it's kind of small and it's hard to see. So what I'll end up doing is maybe bringing the blur down a little bit so I can kind of see the edge is a little bit more defined. So that's the cutting edge that's going to be white. And then we're going to use this darker edge to show the shadows. And we're not going to be sharp. So I'll go ahead and use that black edge, that black color right here. And then I'm going to put it along the back edge like this. And I'll probably have to end up changing the shape a little bit to make sure that it fits right. So I can go ahead and put this edge here. I'm going to copy and paste this. All I have to do is just flip it like this. That's the beauty of using the shape tool and the line tool. You don't have to do it multiple times. And then we'll add another shape in there. But this time I'm going to bring this size down a little bit. Let's just play with it and see if I can see the size. A little bit smaller. There we go. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and add that edge along here. Again, you can only just copy and paste, so just copy and paste, flip it again, place it right here. And then for this edge right here, the edge can be the white right here. So this edge right here is going to be the sharp edge. So we'll add in that white sharp edge there. It's a little too bright there. So what I'll end up doing is just bring the stroke size down and then just bring the opacity down. We'll get a sharper edge there. And then we'll add that darker edge. Oopsie, undo. Add that darker edge underneath right here like this. So this is kind of the quick method on adding light and shadows to your blades. It's kind of the simple way, and the more details that you do, the more that you play with each edge and stuff, the better it will get. So the more strokes and the more light and shadow you add, but it's actually easier than you think. Just remember this little cheat. You're going to have the white highlight be on the sharp edge, and you're going to have the dark shadow part on the edge that isn't sharp and also away from kind of countering from the lighter edge. So adding shadows is easier than you think. It just takes a little bit of practice to kind of make sure you line it up with the blade and do all these other things. So it's a little bit of work to kind of put things together. But once you get the idea on how to put the shapes together and how to use the lines, it doesn't become very complex. So it's easier than you think. So let's go ahead and kind of finish up this. I'm going to add this blade here. And you know what? It might not be a bad idea to maybe add a spike to the edge of it. So I can add like this spike right here on this edge right here. I'm going to drop the saturation down so it's the same kind of gray color right here. So I have a spike on the top here. You can even add a little spike at the bottom down right here. So that way you can use multiple parts of the weapon, right? Technically, this would be kind of like a halberd a little bit, but you have multiple ways to use this weapon. You can charge to lunge inward with a stab. You could do a slashing strike. You use the weight of the weapon to come crashing down on the enemy. That's the beauty of an axe, is its weight, its momentum, it can be swung. And then also, again, it has that stabbing potential as well, that you can stab both ways. Like if you're on the ground, you can stab them with the other end. So there's both ways to kind of go about that. And then just like we did with the first one here, we can just add light sources on top of the blade, or I can go in and just change the blade. So I can go in like this, change the shape. There's that shape, and just go straight over to the blue edge right here like this. And so now I have that blue shape there. And of course, you'll have to change some of the shadow work when you change the texture. So I can just take that shadow work that I did right here, those black lines, and all I have to do is just select them all and then just change the blend mode to overlay. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Oop. Oop, not working with overlay. Let's go with maybe darken, and then we'll bring the opacity down. Then you have those darkened edge. And then of course, I think if you want, we forgot to add in the outline around it. My bad. So stroke, bring that way down. And in fact, because the blade is a frost, we could probably use a blue outline instead. Let's maybe use a darker blue outline. I think that kind of makes more sense. And then we can bring the size up a little bit more. And then I want to make sure that the opacity is all the way up. There we go. Okay, that looks good. You can also just change that color to blue. That's a little thick. Let's change the thickness on that a little bit. A little too thick. There we go. Okay. I think that about looks right. Let me make sure that the opacity and everything is up. That looks about right. And then I think, I'm not sure what blend mode this is on right here. Overlay. Let's change it back to normal. Ah, there we go. It's a little bit better. Now I can kind of see the edge a little bit better. There we go. Okay. So you can change it that way too. It's up to you, and then add all the light sources. So lots of different ways that you can kind of go about doing it, but start with the handle first, and then you can make, like if it was a sword, I would start with using a pole for a handle, and then you would start with the hilt, and then the cross guard, or some kind of, if it even has a guard on it, and then you would make the blade out of the shape tool. So you start with the part in which the hand grips. So it could be a rod, it could be a handle for a sword, or an axe, whatever it might be, and the poles are perfect for using that. So you get the general idea for methods, right? Augmenting an already existing weapon, or build the weapon yourself using stamps, the shape tool, stamps, stuff like that. So it's not complex. Putting it together is pretty easy. So you get that idea. So then let's go ahead then and go on to the next one, which is how is it that